All right, beautiful ladies. Hello, everyone. This is Karen McCoy, and I am here to do part 2 of the metabolism talk. Okay, so you can be on camera, off camera, whatever you choose to do. You can ask questions along the way for those girls that are live on the call. Yes, this will be recorded, and yes, I will put it up on the page. So last week we covered a fair amount in metabolism. So let's summarize a little bit about what we did last week. If you haven't watched that, it is again on our Over 40 Fit and Lean page. So basically, we looked at, whoops, I need a bigger office. We looked at these 6 factors, okay? So we looked at and tried to prioritize. It's not that easy, but what I was trying to get across is that metabolism is never just about the food or the movement. Now, this is what most people think. This is what we're taught, right? Metabolism is always made up of a bunch of different factors. These are the 6 factors that I work with. And when I'm working with a client, I have to decide the priority of which one. So yes, we always look at food, right? Food is a major determiner of metabolism. Now, again, metabolism in the real definition has nothing to do with fat loss. The metabolism is all of the processes that happen in the body when we take in food and nutrients, and then it does its biochemistry thing and sends it out to the body for it to sustain life, right? We talk about metabolism as this magic thing that's either stoked or not. And we either had it when we were young or we lost it when we were aging. And so I kind of want to spread out the idea of metabolism so that you can actually see it is within our control, and it has little to do with aging. It has little to do with genetics. Those things do matter. So we often look at food first. Food is really important, and we're going to talk about that for sure. Exercise, yes, absolutely, it's important. There is a simplicity to, you need to be in calorie deficit if you're going to lose weight. However, the organism, us, has to be factored in because the deficit can change, or the calorie consumption. We look at macros, we look at all sorts of things. There's no magic formula, guys, but there is a shift when we start looking at exercise. So it is important to understand movement creates momentum, right? Then we have age. And so this is where I always say age and hormones, because I work with women over 40, so 40, 50, 60 plus. I've had a lovely 78-year-old that was in my 16-week program. She lost 50 pounds. And it was all through attention to her food and her movement. It actually had nothing to do with age. And this is what they've shown with age. And I really want you guys to understand this. And we'll go into this a bit deeper. You only lose about 2% of your metabolism when we age. Now, we look at it like everything's slowing down. But the problem is this has changed. Our lifestyle has changed, okay? So age is a factor, but it's because we have slowed down, we have changed our habits, or we haven't managed things that we could have for 20 or 30 years prior. And then all of a sudden age hits us and we naturally lose muscle as we age. It can start as early as 40. And over 50, we can lose 35% of our muscle mass unless we are specifically working to keep it on. So what that means is it has to be area specific, muscle specific. So we can't keep the muscle on our shoulders and our arms, our chest and our back if we're just walking, right? So this is where isolation work like strength training, where we're hitting all 9 muscle groups, is vitally, vitally important. Excuse me. We have genetics, and yeah, there is a certain amount of genetics, but what they have found a lot of times is the genetic predisposition is actually in the cultural background of how people were raised, and we pass this on. So yes, genetics do matter, and hormones absolutely matter. And we'll go into that a little bit when I do another talk next week. We're going to look at hormonal shifts. It's more complicated than people think. But again, all is not lost with hormones. So the hormonal shift does happen. If we manage our hormones and able to balance them more, then there is less chance of increased body fat. And again, we're going to look at cortisol, insulin, and leptin, and ghrelin, and estrogen, and progesterone, all that kind of stuff. We'll take a closer look at that in next week's live video. So the lifestyle is probably the biggest one. Now, when I'm assessing a client that I'm working with, I have all of this on the back of my mind. And so every client's a little bit different. So where is the trip up? Where is the first thing we have to go to? So when I work with somebody, the first thing I do is I start with food. And you know why? Because everybody wants to start with food first. So it's almost like I'm serving up what everybody wants because that's their comfort zone. If I went to lifestyle right away, there would be like this smoke and mirror kind of thing going on because we don't always understand how we change in lifestyle, how things have shifted because they've shifted so slowly. It didn't just happen with COVID when we all had to stay home and sit. There was a slow maneuvering before that, right? Now we're driving our kids to soccer instead of other things, and so we become, you know, the soccer mom or all these different lifestyles. And a lot of people think if they have a job in an office and they're always walking to and fro, it's not enough, guys, because that's what I call activity, not exercise, because we're supposed to be moving about through life all the time. Even when I was in the gym and I was moving about helping people in the gym and taking off weights and stuff, there was not a lot of difference in calorie requirements as when I'm sitting down. There's a little bit, but as I'm sitting down doing more online work. So I always start with food, and we start with food logs and your food pictures. And then what happens is I get to see a picture and I get to create a food plan for women over 40, which has the 4 factors in it: number of meals, timing, portions, and macros. Really, really important. And then we have to massage it. But it has to be built around where we're at, right? Any trainer or coach or nutritionist, whoever you're working with, they need to meet the client where she's at. And then they have to build a plan from there. And that's challenging because it takes more time. And a lot of them don't want to take the time. They just want to hand out, you know, 1,200 calories or 1,400 calories. It ain't going to work, guys. And it hasn't. That's why a lot of you are stuck, because that mentality is still out there. The next thing I do is get them moving in their exercise, right? So we have to find what has been your history. Your metabolism is determined by your food habits and your exercise habits, right? They're really important. And here's where I say metabolism is built week after week, month after month, year after year. And we parent our metabolism. We are teaching it how to act and react. And if we need to alter things, which most people do, then we have to reparent it. That's all it is. And so then age, kind of genetics, maybe hormones. Yes, I do take hormonal information in as well. But the lifestyle piece is really important as well. So these 3, and of course we can't forget, how did I forget mindset? Mindset is really big. And this is where we have to look at the beliefs, self-limiting beliefs, the fears around food, the fears around what do I have to give up, my leisure time, my nighttime, my Friday binges, or whatever it happens to be. And this is where we talk about pain versus pleasure. And I do all this in my programming, where we need to switch it around, right? When you start looking at the gains you're going to get when you're living a disciplined life that allows you to reach your goals and maintain them and sustain them, that's the important piece as an aging woman. Then that is the pleasure. And the pain piece, where we're talking about, and this is where a lot of people, well, it's going to be a lot of work. Well, I don't know if it's going to stick. It's going to be hard. I have to give stuff up. People are going to talk about me. Those have to melt away. And the beliefs work that we do in my work is really, really important, because that also is what's running the show. The body and the mind are linked, guys, right? And we know that. And one doesn't run the other. That's the other interesting thing. And this is a whole other work by Joe Dispenza. When we're hit by something, whether it's stress or challenge, some of us go into guilt, some of us go into anger, some of us go into fight or flight. Some of us go into isolation. Some of us go into blaming and complaining. Those feelings actually, and this is what Deepak Chopra talked about 25, 30 years ago, they actually have a chemical signature in them. And that leaves the brain and goes into the body, and the body responds with feelings of fear or anger, and it's a loop. So when people say, does the body run the mind or the mind run the body? It's actually a continuous loop. something for another day. Okay, so what I want to also remind you is we looked at this. We looked at the average woman versus the athletic woman. Okay, so again, see if I can turn that a bit. Kind of hard to see because it's pretty tall. But again, this is on the other video. And so the average woman, we look at basal metabolic rate. It's kind of the same for everybody. It's around 800, 900, right? So the average woman would be the average woman who has not lived an athletic lifestyle. And when I'm talking that, guys, I'm talking not what you did in high school or not that you played baseball for a few years. I'm talking about women who have dedicated themselves to movement and training and an active lifestyle. We call it the athlete, the lifestyle athlete. So the average woman might be the average woman who's 40 or 50. Her body is changing. Her set point is going up, which means where she naturally holds weight goes up. Her dieting attempts aren't working. She's trying to cardio the stuff away. And what happens is she's coming in partway through the storm. And she is looking at it like it must be age, it must be hormones. What I did before didn't work, but she hasn't lived an athletic or a movement and proper food strategy lifestyle for her whole life. And so suddenly she thinks I can do a aerobics class for 3 hours a week and I can do a bit of weights and that's going to change things. And it changes it, but not enough. And we're going to go into that. So we have the resting metabolic rate, which is where you're just sitting, if you're breathing or if you're reading a book and your eyes are moving, you're twiddling your fingers, that's like another 100 calories. The fidget factor, I love the fidget factor. Athletes or people that remain active. My grandma was like that. She couldn't sit. She just couldn't sit. She was always up and doing stuff. She had a hard time sitting watching a movie for 2 hours. I'm the same way. That fidget factor, there's always something to, I don't know, just to meander around. There are some people that can sit on a couch for 8 hours a day and they're quite comfy. So the fidget factor is actually a little unknown, but it was Covert Bailey that brought that one up. Digestion. So this woman, again, is popping in at 40 or 50 and thinking, I got to cut calories to lose weight. So because she's cutting her food down, her digestive fires aren't very big. Whereas over here, this woman is moving, so she needs more food. So she has more digestive fires. So her metabolism is required to work harder, hence burning up more calories. The daily activity, this woman drives around in her car. She'll walk through the office and she thinks that's activity. It's not. The activity is where I'm walking my 3 dogs every day for an hour, or I'm out going for a hike, or I'm lugging trees off the yard because there's been a windstorm, which I just experienced. So the daily activity for people that are already active in that mindset of always moving, their activity is bigger. So a lot of this is lifestyle, guys. And then this woman says, I'm going to go to an aerobics class or maybe a HIIT class. You guys know how I feel about HIIT, where we're doing a little bit and then we're running on the spot a little bit, and then we're doing a bit more weights, and then we're doing some jumping jacks. And it's like, okay, that's my exercise for the day. This lady has planned exercise around weight training. And I'm going to talk about this, really, really important, guys. How much, how often, we can do that on another talk. But if you're not doing it 3 times a week, minimum 45 minutes, and I mean weight training, not HIIT, not boot camp. I'm not saying, oh, I'm going to get my email flooded. I'm not saying those things aren't good, guys. What I am saying is this is for a specific goal in mind. So I'm speaking to the woman who wants to have a responsive and strong metabolism for the rest of her years. So she needs to bring it up and keep it there. And she wants shape and tone and leanness through life. She wants a strong immune system. She wants a strong bone structure, strong organ. She wants to keep her heart strong. A lot of people with high blood pressure, the fastest and best way to lower it is with weight training, guys, not cardio. I mean, that stuff is good. Cardio and walking is great. But what happens with weight training is it actually tonifies the arteries. And so they actually open up. So it allows more blood flow. So the heart doesn't have to beat as fast, because what's happening is the arteries are closing up and the heart has to beat faster to try to get the blood through. So weight training strengthens the arterial walls. And then what happens when athletic woman, is doing weight training, look at the difference between glycogen. Okay, so glycogen, glucose. See if you guys can see that. That's the carbohydrates, whatever you want to call it. So glucose is the sugar, carbs, same thing in the blood. Glycogen is in the muscle. And what happens is this woman is doing aerobics or some HIIT with a little bit of weight training. So there's not a lot of repair. So glycogen is building and repair, right? For the weight training woman that has a specific volume on the muscles, sets and reps, etc., and I'll talk about that maybe next week after, we have to have a certain amount of volume on the muscles in order for them to induce any kind of change. Change means tightness, tone, that kind of stuff, right? And so then because the muscles are torn, that's what happens during weight training. We're actually tearing the muscles apart. That's why intensity and weight used matters, because we're tearing it apart and then it has to heal. And what it does when it's healing is it's calling on the glycogen to come in and heal. So that's why carbs are vitally important, because if you don't have carbs, you're going to inhibit the healing. You're also going to mess up digestion, and your metabolism needs it for fuel. So this no carb, low carb stuff is just working against women. And there's such a fear around carbs. There used to be a fear around fats in the 80s, and now everybody loves their fat. And then the repair piece. So there's repair piece, glycogen and repair on the muscles is really important. There's not much when it comes to aerobics or when it comes to cardio. There still is, but what I'm referring to more is the lifestyle, the woman who is the average woman that says, oh, things have changed. I better get into an aerobics class, or I better do a HIIT 3 times a week. And nothing else has really changed. So her lifestyle has dictated a shorter success castle, if you will. The athletic woman, we have a different way of seeing things. We live differently in our heads. That's what I always say. And so when I get women coming into work with me, they start thinking differently and seeing differently, and they start becoming, like I say, lifestyle athletes. And then their castle gets bigger, and their fat burning increases and intensifies. And also she's taking in over 2,000 calories because she can, and the body's burning it off because it can. Here, the body is kind of shortchanged. I'm not saying an aerobics class isn't beneficial, guys, but what I am saying is this directly relates to metabolic fires, right? So let me go into some other things. Come on, come on. Okay. You guys have any questions? There is a chat here, so I can see chat if you guys have any questions along the way, okay? Okay, let's talk cardio. Cardio is beneficial. Cardio is a pulmonary, it's a pulmonary process. We call it a cardiopulmonary versus a musculoskeletal, which is weight training. So I separate them out, okay? If you want to use cardio as a fat loss, please don't overexert yourself, okay? What I do is I say to my women 2 to 3 times a week, maximum 30 minutes. Again, everybody's different, and this is why individualized coaching is really important, because we got to see where you're at. If you've been training with cardio to keep the weight off, say 4 or 5 times a week or more, what's happening is you are training your body that you have to do that much cardio to keep the weight off. The challenge is without proper weight training 3 to 5 times a week, that it will take from the muscle. It will take some fat, but it will also take from the muscle, and it will take from the water stores as well. This is why if you are in this healthy lifestyle, guys, I always recommend everybody use a body fat machine, because that tells you what's happening in your body, because the scale weight may say you're down 5 pounds, but that 5 pounds might be muscle. And then what happens is we get looser with age, or what we call the skinny fat, right? I found this with running in my 30s. I was running a lot, and no, it was in my 20s, and I would get smaller, but I wasn't getting any shape, because you can't really shape your whole body with running. And as I got older, I started to get looser, and I went, okay, I'm going to focus more on weight training. And that changed It was a recompositioning of the body. So we want to change under the skin, under the landscape. We want to change the muscle to fat ratio. That can only be recognized when you're using a body fat machine. It doesn't matter what you use. I just have a little handheld and it was like $50 and I've used it for like 25 years. Whatever you use, stay with the same method because there's a whole bunch of different methods. There's calipers where they do the pinch thing. I don't like to pinch people. And if you go to somebody else using calipers, their pinch grip will be different, right? How much they're pinching. So I like the stand-ons and I like the handhelds. That way you can gauge where you're at because I've had women at 145 pounds that were 35% body fat. And I've had women at 145 that were 22% body fat, totally different looking body, right? So please keep that in mind. What I say to my women is do your cardio after weight training. Don't do it before. And the reason for that is you want the food, the energy in your body for weight training. And once all that glycogen is used up in weight training, you're going to go to the cardio machine and there's not going to be anything left to burn. And it's going to then start releasing the fat. It's going to keep the muscle because you've just trained it and it's torn and you're going to keep your muscle, but it's going to go liberate the fat cells. And this is why I always say, if you're doing cardio, do it on an empty stomach, because if there's no food in your system, because the body always wants to digest food first, if it digests food, then your body is going to use up some muscle. If there's no food in there, it can go, oh, there's nothing here, there's no fuel, I'm going to go to the fat stores. So do your cardio after training. It also is a good flusher of the body. It gets the toxins out, gets the residuals out. You have less DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness. That's not lactic acid the next day, by the way. That's delayed onset muscle soreness. Lactic acid is where you're pumping and you get that burn. And what's happening is the ammonia and different things in there can't release fast enough, so there's a buildup in the muscle. So I always say the leg extension machine is the classic lactic acid exercise machine because you feel it in your quads. That's what lactic acid is. So if you've been doing cardio a lot, what you need to do is add in your weight training first. And we'll talk about how much you need in order to induce change. You can't, I don't like whole body workouts because they don't offer enough volume, but they can depending how it's set up. But you want to lessen your cardio slowly. We've seen this with competitors, and I went through it in my first show when I was 29. I was doing an hour of cardio a day, even longer, going into my first show because I didn't know any better. And after my show, because you're sick of cardio for 3 months, 4 months, I stopped totally. And what happened was I gained weight like that. A lot of it's water, but I gained weight. Why? Because I had taught my body to keep all the weight off by doing that much cardio. And if you stop all of it, then it piles on. And this is where competitors years ago used to like really bulk out. We've learned a lot along the way. And I even train women with as little cardio as possible going into show because I don't want that rebound. That's really important. And so I would take one day off and sit with it for at least 2 weeks. I like to give 2 weeks for the body to be able to work into a manageable place with the change, and then take another day off or lessen the time used. Because if you keep doing cardio as a weight loss, what's going to happen is you're taking off muscle, you're lowering your metabolism because the muscle's going, and you're teaching your body, oh gosh, more cardio, more cardio, more cardio, more cardio. And we talked about this last week. We got to hold on to the fat boys because there's just not enough of us to go around, and she's doing cardio again. This is why weight training is so important, because it forces the body to hold on and maintain and build muscle, and then the fat is at liberty to leave. So there's a dude who works in town here, and he was saying to me, my wife needs to talk to you. She wants to do weight training, but she runs 5 to 6 days a week. And whenever she stops running, the weight comes on. And I went, exactly, because you're teaching your body how to act and react. And he went, I don't get it. And I said, well, she needs to switch. And he said, she's freaked out. You need to switch slowly, right? Because that piece is really important. Major in weights, minor in cardio. right? And I'm talking cardio in the gym, cardio that women see as a weight loss thing. I'm not talking hiking and walking. I don't even add those into cardio. They're just lovely activities. Let's talk training. So training, I touched on with the glycogen. So when the muscles are torn, they're sore and they have to draw in nutrients to heal. What's going to happen sometimes, guys, is you're going to see an increase in weight. That's water weight. And the reason for that is because water has to come in and we feel a little bit puffy. It has to come in to heal as well. And the glycogen will come in, and that is the recovery and the building process that has to happen. And that requires a lot of energy. And that's where the metabolism has to step in to keep shoveling that fuel into the muscles. And so the more volume, which is sets and reps in a workout, and the bigger the muscles like legs and back, the more fuel you're going to need. And so a good leg workout, like some of you may know, requires a lot of oomph because they're such big muscles and there's a lot of recovery needed. So the metabolism really has to come in. If there's not the carbohydrates or the food in the system to do that, it cannot do its job. And we're going to go into a catabolic state. This is why I'm always saying you need to eat before you train in the morning, anything. And if you don't have a lot of time, make sure that it's in a form that is fast digesting. I'm not a big fan of shakes. I don't like shakes, but you can do shakes. So when you put your protein in there, put your berries, put half a banana in there because you need the carbs. Protein doesn't live alone. Carbs are the boat that bring the protein into the body to be used. So protein and water, you need more in there. And then what happens is the body has the fuel and the metabolism has to be fed, guys. Okay. The metabolism has to be fed. So you can't starve it and then ask your body to do a bunch of training because there's no fuel. And where's the fuel going to come from? It is already overwrought. It's already gone 12 hours without eating, maybe if you've eaten and then you go to bed. And it's going to go, oh no, this is too much. I'm not going to go into the fat stores. I'm going to go into the muscle because it's easier to get to. And this is where we will work against ourselves. There's a lot of stuff out there about it, guys. A lot of people going back and forth. I don't care what they say. I've watched this in my body for 40 years and the women that I've trained. If you want to train empty, then go ahead and train empty. But if you want to see a change in your physiology and you're not using weight training as a fat loss, then eat before you train. And if you have a little bit of time and not a lot of bit of time, then you can do a shake. One of my clients, it was brilliant. What she did was she made a shake, but she put some oatmeal in there, like raw oatmeal, and coffee and berries. And then she would just stir it up a bit in a little blender and she would take it with her. And so the oatmeal started to expand and absorb. And she's drinking this and it's still liquidy. She's drinking this on the way to the gym, which was 45 minutes away. So she didn't have a lot of food in her system that needed to be broken down. So it goes in and gets absorbed faster and she had no problem training. So you just got to play with stuff. And this is what I say to women. The training piece is important because that requires your metabolism to be built. And train fasted, so train without food, and then try training with food and notice the difference. I bet there's going to be more strength and better recovery and more energy when you have food. So this is what I say to women that have been diehard around training fasted. Try the other way and just see what happens. So weight training is your friend because it calls on the body to draw on the metabolic fires in order to recover. But that recovery from weight training requires food, and that food must also be have protein and carbohydrates and a little bit of fat. And there's some very specifics around that. I'm not going to get into that today. There's specific balancing of macros, but that's really if you're at a higher level. This really has to be in place for a few years before you even go to that place. Let's talk food. Okay, so there are, how do I describe this? There are 4 factors, and again, I mentioned this last week. There are 4 factors in food maintenance: number of meals, portions, timing, and macros. It's not rocket science, but it needs to be done in a way where you've got strategy and structure in your food. Here's the deal. When I do food plans, it's because I want my women to take their hands off the steering wheel. Okay. Many of my women are so food fixated. They're either fixated, over controlling, or it blows out the other end. And they're like, oh, screw it. I'm just going to eat whatever I want. And that's mother-daughter energy back and forth. And it's a dichotomy. And we've all been through it in maybe not with food, but maybe with other stuff. And so what we want is we want to build that strategy and structure in your food so that you can stop thinking about food. Okay. When we're constantly thinking about food, and this is the diet mentality, when we're constantly, or the weight loss mentality, when we're constantly going, what should I eat? What shouldn't I eat? Oh, I shouldn't eat anymore. Or if it fits your macros, which is like, if you didn't get your macros, you got to shove them in at the end of the day. That's nonsense to me, as far as I'm concerned, because we want to live a lifestyle. And so we have to look at things with the long view, a bigger perspective. What's important to me? How do I want to live for the next 30 years? If you want to do keto for 30 years, go for it. I don't. If you want to do intermittent fasting, which nowadays is you cram it into like 6 to 8 hours eating, and then the rest of the time you don't. If you want to do that, that's fine too. I don't. I want to be able to go out some nights. I want to be able to have something, after 5 o'clock at night or before noon. So you always, again, have to look at lifestyle, and you have to manage your expectations. So that's a really important piece too. Remember, how you get there in the body and the metabolism and the leanness is the same place as how you stay there. So we don't get to do one way and then change it. And this is where women think, well, I've lost the weight, and then their old lifestyle slowly comes back in. Not just the food, but the exercise might dim, or they might not be as proactive outside, or whatever it happens to be. So we have to be really objective with self. And this is where coaching is valuable, because we're objective, because we're on the outside of you and we can see, and we're usually subjective with self. So there's that blind spot. We don't know what we don't know. We don't see what we don't see. We're so busy in our world, and a good coach is going to be able to spot it. And the longer you're working with them, the faster they can spot, because that relationship is there, and they come to know you. So rules and regimentation is required in a food plan, and it has to be, and this creates the consistency, but your food and your meals are running on automatic pilot. And this is where we're building tolerable hunger, which means every 3 to 4 hours, our stomachs grumble for food. That means you have a good working metabolism, guys. So if we keep snacking or grazing through the day, we're stomping it down all the time, and your body isn't allowed to let you know. And so you're losing that really important relationship between understanding your metabolism calling you and the leptin and ghrelin are out of whack. And so a lot of people like grazing, or they're busy or whatever. But if you have structure, I usually say 3 to 4 meals is all you need, guys. And if we stay to that, and it takes 2 weeks, usually, if your blood sugars and your leptin and ghrelin's out of whack from unplanned eating, off course eating, it will take time. And your hunger may go, I'm really, really hungry, but you have to just move through that for a couple of weeks and be consistent. And then what happens is everything's going to come in line. This is a harmonious metabolism that you're working on, and it's coming if you can do that. But the point is, healthy people and lean people don't think about food all the time. We don't think about food all the time. And so that is a piece of the mindset. And that is why you have to have structure and consistency in your meals, timing, portions, and macros. And the more you are, this is where your healthy food habits overrides your diet thinking habit. And this is where we're moving into flow with our food instead of resistance. When we're in resistance, guys, and I teach this a lot, there's so many ways to resist in our life, but in body transformation, when we're in resistance, we're going to create more resistance. We're going to create more fear, more guilt, more shame. And so this is about getting into flow. And when you have that structure in your food, you stop thinking and obsessing about food, because it's like, I eat at, what times do I eat at now? I'm just trying to think. I eat at 7, and I'm hungry when I eat. And that's the other thing, guys. If you wake up and you say, I can't eat breakfast, well, what does breakfast mean? If you can eat within the first hour, that's great. Now they're saying breakfast is not the most important meal of the day. It is to me. Why? Because I have stopped eating at 6 o'clock at night. I have an early dinner around 5:30, and I stop eating. So I haven't eaten for 12, 14 hours. So by the time I wake up, I'm friggin' hungry. So I always say, if you're not hungry, back away on some of your nighttime eating or lessen your portion, and you will build hunger for breakfast. So it's all about rearranging that. And in all honesty, dinner's not my biggest meal. It's breakfast and lunch, and then I have a snack. So we want to be on autopilot with our food, and then that becomes a habit. And we don't have to think about food. The problem with the diet mentality is it makes us think about food all the time, right? Don't think about a pink elephant, right? So the diet mentality is always an overconsumption of thinking. The other thing with that, guys, is it puts stress on the brain, where the brain is always in fear and over control and overthinking. And this creates an acidic and chronic sympathetic state in the body. The cortisol increases, the inflammation increases, the insulin, we become less sensitive to insulin, which is what we don't want. We want to remain sensitive. That's the blood sugars. And our bodies are less willing to lose the weight. And as we age, the body and the metabolism becomes more sensitive, which can be a good thing or a bad thing. And so if the body is resistant to losing weight, then as we're aging, it's going to become more resistant, because there's so much going on in the real estate in the head that the body goes, holy shit, there's a lot going on there. There's a lot of energy being used towards worry and OCD and all this stuff going on, not just around food, but life and challenges. Then the body holds on because it's in survival. Now, that's not the only reason. We usually have to look at food and lifestyle too, but that's a big piece of it, guys. Okay. Weekends and holidays. Most good intentioned eating is wiped out from Friday to Sunday, and you can wipe out a whole week with the weekend. So this is where I say, again, us who have been doing this for a long time, I don't eat any differently on the weekend than during the week. I don't see it as a reward or I'm free, get out of jail free card. That's just a mentality, and it's really important that we understand the metabolism doesn't know it's a weekend, right? And so we stay on. It doesn't mean we don't have an extra beer or an extra cookie or whatever. That's fine. But a lot of people go unstructured on their weekends. The other thing is the biggest time for weight gain is during holidays. And what happens is, especially for Americans, because you guys have it all clumped together. So you've got Thanksgiving, which is later than us. High stress times on and off affect the training women. Yeah, for sure. Yes, it will, Colleen, but not as much, because our metabolisms are already high and there's already a demand for recovery on the muscles. So not as much. It is where there's more of a sedentary lifestyle, and then the body, it doesn't have the momentum and the energy in it. So that's what I've seen just from experience. Is there any research around this? I don't know, but I'm telling you, cortisol, I meant to ask you. Cortisol is a real tricky one. So there's so much talk around cortisol. There's no way to measure it because it goes up and down throughout the day. And so if you ask somebody to, look at your cortisol, then some doctors are like, and I have an endocrinologist, she's like, I don't do it because it doesn't tell me anything. There's this whole thing around cortisol, but it can raise your stress levels. What I found is my best stress reliever is the gym. And my cortisol is fine. Now, maybe genetically it's fine. I don't know. I do have a challenging life like everybody else, but it's a hard way to manage it. And so cortisol is a necessity for life. It still helps with biochemistry and metabolism. And what we don't want is chronic elevated cortisol. And that's not just due to stress, it's also lifestyle and food, and all that other stuff in there as well. It's kind of a tricky thing to teach. Everybody's talking it because it's pretty cool. All of my belly fat's because of cortisol. Okay, could we look at some other things too? Right? Like this is where we can dig in and get to the truth of stuff too. So the holiday piece is where we gain 5 pounds here, and then Christmas comes along and it never comes off, and then New Year's comes along and then it never comes off, and then it's wintertime and we're sitting more. So what happens is for a lot of people, even if they only gain 5 pounds in a year, then there's another year and another year and another year, and then they're not training and they're not maybe moving as much because they're sitting more for their job, or they're going on holidays where they sit on the beach. And then what happens is it compounds itself. But then there'll be a day when us women will look in the mirror and go, holy crow, I've got 50 extra pounds on me. How did that happen? Well, it didn't happen overnight. This stuff never happens overnight, guys. It takes a long time for it to come on. It doesn't take as long to come off. That's the good news. So the weight gain is often the weekends and the holidays. And that's what research has shown time and time again. Yeah, so the stress piece, I've got 3 more things to get through. So there's episodic stress, which is natural. There's a stress, maybe you had a car accident or somebody passed away. Those are episodes, and those are a normal part of life. They don't really act or react on our metabolisms and our bodies. It can be hard, yes, but it doesn't really create a biochemistry storm. But the chronic stress, the worrying, the overthinking, the obsessive compulsiveness, the drive to try to maintain, it's so much of a weight in the brain that what happens is this is the chronic sympathetic state. This is where the body acidifies. Probably cortisol is up, and the body can't lose the weight when it's in that place. It can, but it's going to be harder because it's kind of like a fish swimming upstream, because everything's working against it and the body is trying to protect itself, and it's just in this challenge all the time that the body doesn't feel like it's safe to lose the weight. And if we try to crash diet, it's even harder because then it's really not safe to lose the weight, and the body is like, no friggin' way. So remember our saying, coax the body and it responds, force the body and it rebels. So the slower weight loss is more effective than the faster. And the slower it is, the more comes from fat and not water and muscle. So let me just go into the diet triad. So the diet triad is, again, if you guys have watched my masterclass video, you know this one. So it starts out with the first phase is we do cardio, we cut calories perhaps, and then we have the honeymoon phase. So the body goes, woohoo, this is great. And it drops a bunch, and we might drop like 5 pounds in a week. The problem is then it puts on the brakes and we come into a maintenance, which is slower. There might still be a little bit of fat loss, but what happens is if we continue digging in to try to overemphasize fat loss or weight loss, then what happens is the body will go into the cumulative phase where it will actually halt any fat loss. There may be water loss. Then it turns to muscle loss, which is what we don't want. That's metabolism, that's healthy aging, that's shape and tone and tightness, right? And then the cumulative phase is a long plateau. And this is where every diet attempt, every cut in calories, every cutting out of food groups, everything you're doing different than the consistency in the meals, timings, portions, and macros. Every time we do something differently, especially as we age, because the body becomes more sensitive to change, it goes, uh-oh, little red flags. What's going on? What's going on? And it will hold on. And the plateau can last for months. And then women will try harder because we're hardest working things on the planet. We'll try harder. We'll dig in more. We'll go lower in calories because I must need less calories because I'm aging. No, it's because your body is responding in a way that you don't want it to respond. And it's starting to shut down. And what it does to conserve energy, because that's what this body is all about, lowers metabolism, guys. It lowers the metabolism, slows all the processes. You might have more colds. You might feel less energy. You'll definitely feel less energy. You won't sleep as well. All of these things compound when the metabolism has to dummy down because you're over cardioing, you're over cutting calories, or maybe you're all over the place with a new diet plan all the time and you're stressed in your brain because it's not working. And so the cortisol is going up, everything's inflamed and you're acidified. So do you see how this compounds? So that is the honeymoon phase, is the first one where you drop the weight and you think, oh, this new diet's working. And then there's the maintenance phase where everything slows down. You're like, it's not dropping as fast anymore. I'll hang on. And then if you hang on too long and too hard, the body rebels and it starts to make 100 calories act like 300 calories. And that is where we blame it on aging and hormones or a stressful life, which it might not be. It's just what we've done. And we taught our body how to protect itself. And every time there's a new threat, it protects itself faster and faster and faster and deeper and longer. I hope that makes sense. So aging, I mentioned this, our metabolism only dips by about 2%. And not at all if we've been doing the training and the exercise and the proper food planning, consistency in food for a long, long time. And this is what science has shown. I'm so glad for that because there's a bunch of us women that they're now doing research on, weight training women, not triathletes, not cardio, because that used to be the thing. But there was this small little group of us that got into weight training in our 20s. And we've been doing it for decades. And they're looking at us going, it's a very different end game. The immune system is stronger. Recovery is stronger. Longevity, different body type, different biochemistry, different hormonal, different metabolism. So this research is coming out, but we've been seeing it all along, those of us that have been in the game and living it. So that's just my little thing on aging. And the last thing is I want to just say about hormones. We're going to talk about this last week because it's really, really important. Hormones shift, yes. But what happens is when hormones shift, rather than looking at how to balance or managing the hormonal years, when we add more cardio, when we cut calories, we are trying to approach it with, something that is a formula. But hormonal shifts create a stress in the body, and it can increase insulin, it can increase cortisol, and it can drive down progesterone, which you don't want because that makes estrogen dominant. So a lot of times we're not making more estrogen. It's just that there's a relationship between estrogen and progesterone, and the first to drop with aging is progesterone. And guys, that is your feel-good hormone as well. That is your natural antidepressant. And there are receptors in every part of the body for progesterone. So a lot of women going through hormonal stuff, they get depressed. Sure, because the progesterone is dropped because the body says you're not going to have babies anymore. So we're going to drop this because the progesterone holds the baby in the uterus, right? And once that drops, then estrogen now is dominant. You're not making more. You might even be making less, but the portions are out of whack. And that causes a hormonal and metabolic storm in the body where everything is out of whack because it's never just about one hormone. And leptin and ghrelin are hormones too, and then you've got a bunch of other hormones, right? So it's not just the female hormones I'm talking about here. They all work in concert. It affects the thyroid, it affects the adrenals. All of them work in concert. It's a big symphony. So this is where in my program, I have 2 hormone specialists, and they are dedicated to hormones. One does herbal remedies, and the other one does bioidentical. And the reason for that is because when your hormones are balanced, then you don't have as much of a storm. Now, there may be a storm because we're all different. My mother didn't have anything wrong with her. I felt the storm. She's like, "What's wrong with you girls? What your mother went through is not necessarily what we're going to go through. It's different, and life is different." So when we have consistent food, when we have consistent training, and we've been maintaining it for decades, when the hormonal shifts happen, you have a ready-made body whose biochemistry and hormonal profiles and metabolism is strong and nurtured in staying the course. It is when that stuff starts to happen and there hasn't been that consistency and you go really out of whack, and then they're trying to apply cardio and they're trying to apply diets and they're trying to cut out carbs because carbs are apparently making them fat, or they're doing keto, and then we have an even greater storm. So this is where, again, you need to have somebody in your, I've lost no weight but gaining muscle over the past 2 years. Is that okay? Yes, baby, add that muscle. Of course it's okay. Um, it'd be interesting to do your body fat, Colleen, just to see where you're at. You're pretty lean, so I'd probably say you're at around maybe 23, 24% body fat, I would think, just in looking at you. Um, and I'm really good at looking at pictures and being able to see body fat because I used to judge for a lot of years and just watching bodies for decades. But the hormonal storm is real. But this is where when I have women coming in, they'll blame it on hormones. Yeah, it is hormones, but the foundation wasn't set. So this is where I still am a believer in proper training and proper food and being consistent in weight training and in proper food so that as you go through the hormonal shifts, it's less of a storm. Or if I have women coming up that haven't yet, because usually you're when things go a little bit awry, you're in perimenopause when your first period goes awry, and then you're in full menopause a year after not having a period. And so it's usually around, in my experience, it's kind of happening earlier the last decade. And I think because a lot of the toxins and stress in the environment, I think. So a lot of women in their mid 40s to late 40s are starting to experience, but it used to be 52, 53, somewhere in there, 55. I stopped at 53, and it just stopped. I had, when I went through all my shows, I did 7 shows. I never lost my period. And I was happy about that because it showed me that I had a strong metabolism and strong hormonal profile. And when I was 50 or 54 was my last show, and I'm standing up on stage and I had my period that day. And I'm like, damn, this is crazy. But I had maintained a strong body, and that made me feel good because this whole thing of weight training and proper food, it needs to be done properly and consistently. And when I headed into show, I did like a 23-year span of it. I saw all sorts of shit happening out there, guys, that women should not be doing to their bodies. Or they're listening to their coach that usually is not a coach. They're a competitor that trained and competed and they call themselves a coach now. Please be very, very careful where you hang your hat, guys, because it's really, really important. Question everything. But if you think it's pushing your body too much, don't do it. Longer and slower is better for anything, for competition, for weight loss, for any kind of big momentum in your life. The slower the gains, the deeper the staying power of it. And it's the same. Your metabolism is not broken. It does not need to be healed. That was what they were talking about. I met a girlfriend of mine that was back in show. She went into show, did pretty good, but then all the weight came back on like 30 pounds in 2 months, and she was devastated, and it kept climbing up. And then she went into another show 8 months down the road, and I'm like, why are you doing another show? And she said, oh, my coach said I'm healing my metabolism. Are you effing kidding me? So this is what's going on out there. So please be wary if you're thinking of doing a show. Do not do a show to get in shape. It's not how it works. If anything, it will get you out of shape as soon as you step off stage. So you really need to know how to do it right. Really, really, really need to know how to do it right. And no, I don't train competitors anymore. I do lifestyle women. That's my thing. I hope I went through everything. I went through cardio, training, food, weekends and holidays, stress, hormones, and aging. We looked at the 6 factors again. So we've got age, genetics, hormones, lifestyle, exercise, food, and mindset, which is 7. So there's 7 different factors, and they're all related to metabolism, guys. It's not just food going in and what you're burning out. It is also how your body uses that energy. So when you have a strong working body and everything is humming along and you got great adrenals and you got strong thyroid and you've got all this stuff happening and you're happy in your world despite what's happening out there. What happens out there, guys, and the externals, we all have shit to deal with, guys. But how you deal with it, how you manage it, is up to you. And this is where everything has to start and end with self. Everything. And if you're waiting for the externals to change for you to be happy or healthy or whole, it ain't going to happen. Or if it does happen, then you're going to be tripped up the next time. And you're going to, again, look outside yourself to wait to be happy. It can't be that way. This is the empowered coaching piece that I do. It's really, really important that we come healed and we're in alignment and we're in our authenticity. I know that's a word that's been used a lot, and it's too bad because people are speaking their truth and their authentic self and all that stuff. At late 50s, I've built more muscle than ever. Can I keep growing at this age? Yeah, you can. So how much, Colleen? I don't know. What you want to do is you want to maintain that. Okay. Maintaining is actually fairly easy, but the most important is consistency and the volume, right? Is there any, I mean, I see people haven't trained and then they start training in 60s or 70s. Now they're going to build muscle fast because they're a newbie. But if you've been training a long time, I'll just throw this in as we finish. If you've been training a long time, your goals or your ability to add more muscle gets diminished with time. Our bodies and our musculature can only go so far. I can't gain any more muscle at this age because I've been doing it so long. But what I can do is if I back away, I might lose a bit of muscle, but then I can come back and build it again. So I sometimes do that if I want to take a few months off just to recoup my body and my joints and stuff. Really important as the aging athlete, guys. I teach this again with my one-on-one girls because it's really important that we understand age is not just a number. It is not just a number. And women who say that, I get it. What they're saying is you can partake anytime. That's true. But aging changes things. And if it hasn't for you yet, it will. And then we learn to work with our aging body along the way because we want to stay strong and healthy in this vessel of ours for the next 20, 30, however many years God grants us on the planet, because we see too many people who do not. And you have to put the stress on the body, meaning weight training, and you have to be consistent in its health and wholeness every day, guys, every day. Because what happens is you're going to end up like that old person, like my mother in the facility that can't walk at 84 because she thought eating a little bit of yogurt and drinking her coffee was enough. And she walked around the mall 3 times. It's not enough. And she's crippled up. She's lost tremendous amount of bone. She is in pain every single day. No matter what I said to her in being from the industry, she wouldn't listen. And that's a hard part too. And we love the people around us, but they don't want to hear our advice. They really don't. And she's also from a generation where enough was enough. But I saw her slowly over the last 20 years. When she walked, her gait changed, just a little bit of a hitch, right? A little bit of a hitch in the right-hand side. And I'm like, okay, Mom, what's going on? Oh, just got a bit of a hitch. And then she was leaning on stuff a little bit. And then she was saying it was because she carries her purse on that side. And then she started walking with a little bit of a tilt. Then she was using a cane. She didn't see it happen over years, but I hadn't seen her. I wouldn't see her for 1 or 2 years at a time. And I would see it drastically because I wasn't there all the time seeing it. So this is a good example of how life slowly happens to us and we don't notice it. So it's really important that we take stock along the way, and you must move your body and you must feed it well in order to live well in your 60s and 70s and 80s. And if you're in your 20s and 30s, which I don't work with women in their 20s and 30s because they're so busy doing their stuff, then you probably won't even think that you're going to get there. You will get there. And when you get there, aging does humble you, but there's ways around that. And that's what I do in my program as well. So I'm going to let you go, guys. I've had you for an hour again. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to put this up on the page. If anybody has any questions, please pop them in there. Thank you. Muscle gain in 2 years has helped me so much. Yes, 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 Colleen. Well, you are a diehard in this, and you're always asking questions, and you're always reading and doing, and you're doing, right? There's again, difference between knowing and doing. Knowing is the reading, and knowing is the knowledge. And the knowledge is important, but the doing, the action piece is absolutely a must do for any kind of success in anything: body, weight loss, marriage, career, money, whatever. And it's in that doing piece where most people, that's where the brain, the psyche, this is the mindset that we always have to override. And this is like the cognitive restructuring that we do. It's going to go, oh, you don't have to do that today. Oh, come on, let's just sit on the couch and have some bonbons. You must override that because When you do, that becomes your new normal. That becomes your habit in time. And I promise you, if you do that enough, you're going to look back at yourself and go, I can't believe I used to think like that and do like that. When I see people doing stuff or having this big, like big deep meal at dinner and like I don't eat like that. I look at that and go, man, I was brought up that way. Meat and potatoes and gravy and bread and blah blah blah. Blah. And it's totally different. But when you start looking at the majority and you start looking at it like, oh, that's odd, or you start questioning it, there you go. That means you're on the road to success. I promise you guys, when you start looking with a different set of glasses, when you learn and do this stuff and you start creating a new way, new momentum, new normal, again, in health and weight loss and body, in money, in relationships, whatever, you're going to start looking. And there's so much experience when you watch other people. Reading a book is great, but let's get out of the bookshelf and go outside and start playing with this stuff. The most interesting people and the people that, oh, nice. Thank you, Colleen. I didn't know you were a binge eater. I never would have guessed that. Interesting. Congratulations. It's a big one. Binge eating is very emotional. It can be very challenging for sure. That's congrats. The most interesting people and the people that grow and learn the most, two values, guys, to stay open and to stay curious. If you carry those with you, your life will be lived so differently, so rich, so empowered, so fruitful, because you're open to and you don't judge and you're kind of neutral until stuff comes in. And that's where the good stuff starts going. So I hope this was good for you guys. Thank you for showing up. I appreciate it. I will put this on the page. Anything comes up, do ask questions. I'm happy to answer them there. Okay. Lots of love, you guys. Take care. Thanks, Chrissy. You too. Bye-bye.